The question the mom brought up was, how do I handle my child in relation to saying sorry and getting my child to say sorry? And the challenge with being like, say you're sorry. So say two kids are struggling and fighting, and then we're like now enforcing, say you're sorry. So half the time the child actually isn't sorry. They actually did what they wanted to do. And so now we're teaching them to do something, go against what they're actually feeling without any cause, without any shift in their perception, without any real accountability. We're getting them to basically sweep it under the rug. And then we're typically training the other child to sweep it under the rug as well by saying, it's okay, versus actually acknowledging what happened, taking accountability. So, later on in life, they can go ahead and have an abusive spouse, and all the person has to do is say sorry, and they're like, it's okay, versus actually being committed to aligning with their highest and best. So if we then, well, the other thing about sorry is that it implies that there's a victim involved. Now, those of you who have watched my 4 stages of life video understand what I mean by victim, and I'm going to explain that in detail later today on basically the premise that there's 4 stages of life. And the first stage, life is happening as us. And in the second stage, we start to believe that life is happening to us. We start to perceive ourselves as victims that life is happening to. And what I mean by happening to is any version. If you say, yeah, I would have been successful, but my wife cheated on me. I would have been, I was happy, but then my husband left me. Or my boyfriend didn't love me. Or, I was going to be successful, but then the economy had a downturn. Or, I was happy today, but then you made me sad. That's a victim statement. You made me angry. Victim statement. So if it has the word made in it, it's a victim statement. So every time you teach your child anything like, that made her sad when you did that. Victim statement. So you're empowering your child to view themselves or others as victims. Every movie we've watched that says, you complete me, is a victim statement. It's a codependent statement of how I'm not whole and complete within myself, and I'm dependent upon you to make me whole and complete, and therefore if you go away, I will fall on my face and fall apart and be nothing, and my whole life will fall apart, and then I will be the victim to you choosing what you chose. And we all tell our victim stories. I mean, even with me knowing my consciousness, when I first split with my first wife, for even knowing the consciousness for nearly 10 years, I wanted to tell a victim story about how she did this to me, and she did that to me, and she made me this, and she made me that. Well, she didn't do anything to me, and she didn't make me anything. If anything, the whole experience, because of the choices that I chose, empowered me to be a greater version of myself. To learn, to grow, to love myself, to heal. And so, anytime we're requiring somebody to say sorry, we're believing ourselves as the victim. Anytime I'm saying, you complete me, I'm seeing myself as the victim who needs someone to save me. So, as I'll explain later, there's this victim, villain, hero triangle where there are 3 roles in any drama in the world. Every drama that exists, there are 3 roles required. There's the victim, there's the villain, and there's the hero. And drama only exists in our world when we are choosing to participate in any one of those roles or a combination of the 3. And true power only exists when we're not in any of those roles, when we're in a place that I call essence, when we're in the truth of who we are. And when we choose to shift from the drama to the truth of who we are, all arguments end immediately. All wars end immediately within ourselves, right? Which is ultimately the solution to ending the wars out there isn't to continue to blame and say, they're doing it, they're wrong. It's to say, how am I creating war within myself and create a change within me that allows that change to be expressed outside of me? So even saying, you know, I'm a victim to the politics, I'm a victim to the economy. And, you know, anytime we say I would be rich, but the economy turned down and I lost this. Like I played that victim story out when I filed bankruptcy in like 2007 or 8 or 9 or somewhere around there. Filed bankruptcy. And I wanted to tell victim stories. Yeah, I was really kicking butt, but then the economy went down and I lost my shirt. Well, even that's a victim statement. What would be more accountable, that would actually empower me, would be I was kicking butt and then the economy took a turn, and because of the choices I had made, based on the lack of knowledge and understanding I had about how to invest my money and manage and structure my life, I lost a ton of money and learned a bunch of lessons, and now I'm coming at it again from a new approach, having applied those lessons so that I can create sustainable success. And so even so, if I asked any of you here who, like, if we were racing to see who most wanted to be the victim, I'm like, who wants to be a victim? Like, no one would raise their hand. And then if I asked you, well, who of you thinks you are a victim or show up like a victim, in general, most people would be like, no, my mom used to do that. You know, I have a friend who's always acting like a victim. But if we get real, the truth is, if you've been in an argument, you've played the victim. Every argument is simply a race to the victim position. Let me say that again. Every argument in the entire world that has ever taken place between anybody was always just a race to the victim position. So every argument you have ever been in was you trying to prove that you were a victim. Swallow that for a minute. Every argument you have ever been in has been simply a race to prove that you were the victim. I was just going along fine, having a happy day, and then you came in all grouchy, and now I'm grouchy. I was going along just fine, and then I stepped into this group call, and someone was feeling all these feelings, and I just couldn't maintain my well-being. You know, and they made me like lose composure, and I had to leave. Any version, like anything. And even if it wasn't with another person, the way that you're arguing with other people is simply a reflection of the way you are relating with yourself. So, and the challenge, so I'm going to pull up a model here. I'm going to screen share. And then I want to cover a couple models. And then once we've got the context of these models, I want to come back to the word sorry and do some powerful stuff around the word sorry and then relate that back to our children and things like that. So share the screen. So someone let me know, can you see where this says expanding your capacity to give and receive love?
Yeah, we can see it.
Thank you. So, well, as we look at this sheet, I want you to consider the premise that there is only one problem in all the world. And that every other problem that anybody ever faces boils back to this very same problem. And it's the problem that I call the upper limits problem. This is content I got from Gay Hendricks, one of my favorite all-time mentors, and many of you have read or listened to The Big Leap. And for those of you who haven't, I highly recommend it. And in The Big Leap, he talks about this problem right here that you see on this sheet, which is that the only problem is we go along in life, and when life gets better than we can handle it, then we do something to sabotage it. So if you watch my cursor here, let me get this thing to leave me alone for a second. Okay, so I'm trying to update my iPad because later on I'm hoping I updated my screen share thing that will allow me to draw on my iPad and have you guys see it so that I can demonstrate models live. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see if I can be on technology and manage other technology both at the same time. That will be a miracle in and of itself. So, so back to the point is the upper limits problem is the only problem we ever face, which means we have this thermostat setting of how good we can handle life. We start here, like if we were to find that thermostat setting, it would be right here in this average of our highs and our lows. So this peak represents the high point in our life. This represents our typical low points, typical high point, typical low point. And then you see that in this model, it says shift, integrate, expand, which means we can actually expand up into a higher thermostat setting. Or if we hit this upper limit problem, we start at this high, drift down to the low, make a shift, go back up to the high, upper limit, which is where we hit the ceiling of how good we can stand life, how good we can handle it, before we do something to sabotage it and bring ourselves back down. So this could be too much love, too much passion, too much money, too much joy, too much connection and sex and intimacy, too much pleasure, freedom, peace, spaciousness, whatever it is, and we're just not accustomed to it. I know it sounds foreign, like, what? Why would I ever think that I had too much? Why would I self-sabotage? Why would I destroy that? It's a subconscious thing. It's an issue with our nervous system being acclimated to handle a certain amount of positive energy. And when we go higher than what we're acclimated to, then if we're not conscious and aware of it, and part of the other reason why I'm sharing this is it ties directly to the sorry experience, as well as someone else had asked, hey, how do I shift out of the drama? And so I'm going to teach you how to identify the drifts and then how to shift out of them while we're at this. Now, if I don't know how to identify the drift and catch it and create a shift, then I go down, and you'll see where I spiral down here into drama, where victim, villain, hero exists. And I do drama, 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 miserable, adrenaline rush, which happens to be arguably the most addictive substance in the world, adrenaline. Science says that we only consume about 1 tablespoon of adrenaline throughout our entire life, but that it's completely addictive, and every time we have an argument, it's just to go back and get a hit of that drug, that hormone that we're addicted to, and that every argument and every life-threatening experience we had in our life, over the course of our entire life, we will only consume about a tablespoon of adrenaline. So to kind of digest that for a minute, only a tablespoon over our entire life, and we get a hit of it every time we argue, every time we fight, every time we almost die, every time we get scared. So that's a big statement. So if you look over here to the left, the thermostat setting is based on, are we going to spiral up and choose to live a life of genius that is with flow and ease? This would be about grace and spaciousness and joy and pleasure and freedom and abundance and service. Or are we going to choose to live a life of stress and conflict and stagnation and overwhelm and struggle and suffering and all of that. Now, most of us tend to think that life just happens to us. We've been conditioned to believe it happens to us. And people buy into our victim stories, and we get a big payoff for being in our victim story. We typically, like if I complain about my victim story, then people say, oh, I'm so sorry. You've had it so rough. Here, let me give you a hug. Let me give you some compliments. Let me say some nice things to you. Poor you, poor you. And we get this. So notice the role they're playing. They're playing the hero role. They're like, oh, there's a victim. I was watching this play out on the playground with my 3-year-old just like 2 days ago. We were at the mall, and there's this playground. And my 3-year-old wants to play on this swing. And it kept happening over and over. First, it was the pirate ship, and everyone wanted the steering wheel of the pirate ship. And so me and this other dude of a different race and a different religion, it was pretty cool because we were helping our children resolve the conflict. And then we looked at each other in the eyes, and there was this moment of acknowledgement. And I was like, this is awesome. Here's 2 grown adults who aren't an ego, who are at the mall at a random place, who are in love, in a space of love. And no, I'm not in love with them, but we're in a space of love. And we were both resolving conflict, and it wasn't about, race or religion or anything. I think he might have been a Muslim. They looked like they were wearing some type of attire of some other sort. And we were both gently resolving the conflict with such ease and grace and peace. And we looked at each other, and there was this connection for a moment. And I sat down, and I started holding my wife while we were watching our baby, and I just kind of wept. I just felt my body kind of shake and weep for a moment. And my wife's like, are you crying? And I'm like, yeah. And it was like literally like 10 seconds or something. And I'm like, it was so awesome. I just made this eye contact with this guy, and I was already thinking it was so awesome. We were resolving conflict, and we weren't perpetrating racism and all the shit that's gone on forever. And we looked at each other, and we acknowledged each other, and we're different race, different religion, different country, different everything. And we just saw 2 human beings, 2 beautiful beings who were in a space of love. And I just honored myself and him in that moment, and like just had these tears of joy. And so it's beautiful. Well, later on, there's the other part underneath the pirate ship that has this little swing, and all the little 3-year-olds are, hogging and staying on the swing forever. And then the other one gets upset because they don't get it. And then I coached my daughter to ask her what she wanted. I'm like, well, go ask them. She goes and asks, and they said no. And so then she freaks out and goes into victim mode. She's only 3 years old, and she goes into victim mode. So that didn't surprise me. 3-year-olds can easily go into victim mode. The next thing that was interesting is immediately 3 or 4 heroes rush over to save my daughter. Oh, it's okay. I'm sorry. Oh. So there was like a whole herd of little heroes that were already conditioned to be heroes when they saw a victim. And my daughter was already getting kudos and a payoff and getting reinforced about the value of playing victim because it meant that she got all kinds of attention. Right? And Mother Teresa says there's more people starving for attention than there are people starving for food in the world. And so my daughter I'm sitting witnessing, I'm like, wow, my daughter's already right here, right now, getting trained and conditioned that if she plays the victim role, she will get lots of love and attention and kudos and support and all this. And that's being reinforced right here as we speak. Wow. All in good intention. And we tend to think that the hero role is this beautiful role to play. Because being of service is beautiful, and loving your neighbor is beautiful, and assisting others is beautiful, but not when we sacrifice ourselves. So if it's not coming from essence, if I sacrifice me to save you, that's a lose-win. Someone lost, and if we're one, We both lost, so it's lose-lose. If I sacrifice me, I will later jump from the victim. I will say, I will victimize myself to save you so I can be the hero. But later on, I'm going to be pissed off when you don't save me, and I'm going to jump right over to the villain role and attack you. I will want to crucify you. So we tend to put people on a pedestal, and then later on we want to crucify them. I mean, look at Christ's life. What better example of pedestal, crucify. And we do it all day long with leaders, mentors, coaches. Even some of my ideal clients tend to slip into where they're my highest paid clients. I rock their world, and they get into a drift, and they start to look for, just out of habit, because we've been conditioned this way, to look for what's wrong with the person so that we can later dethrone them and crucify them, because instead of seeing each other as equals, we always want to put someone above us or below us. Ego always wants to put someone above us or below us versus just being together as equals. So, so when we go into, so here's another model that explains this in another way. We call this the learning cycle, and this is the work of Gay and Kathleen Hendricks, the Hendricks Institute, some of my favorite all-time mentors. A lot of the foundational transformation work is my favorite. A lot of my favorite stuff comes from them. Of course, my work is a culmination of not only what I did with them, but another nearly $500,000 worth of investments in marketing and sales and business and leadership and communication skills and body language and parenting and all kinds of stuff, and physical education and fitness and diet and nutrition and all kinds of story work and you name it. So, but this was a beautiful and critical part of my journey, was the work with this couple and this institution. And so here's a primary model, and for me, this is the #1 model. This is the foundational piece that establishes a new paradigm for us to operate from. A paradigm of responsibility versus victimhood. A paradigm of choice versus reaction. A paradigm of empowerment versus, I don't know what else to say other than it's just no longer victimhood. So, and here's how it works. We're going along in ease and flow, and then something happens. And then when that something happens, we either drift and head down into drama and do victim, villain, hero. And down here, we get stuck in the back part of our brain. Oh, and I'm not screen sharing. So here you're just looking at me, and I'm talking about a model. So let me get my screen share back up. So we're going along just fine in ease and flow. She's like, comment says, laugh out loud, he's not a model. A different model. So you're going along here in ease and flow. This circle here represents I'm in ease and flow. Life's just circulating in ease and flow. You still see me, not my model? Okay, you do see my model, not me? We see a model of you, but not the model. I see the learning cycle. Okay, Jonathan sees the learning cycle. Amanda, you don't see me, okay? It says Dan, but it actually means, boy, what's your name again? Gail. So, the rest of you don't see my screen? Chandel sees the screen? Okay, you see the learning model. So, Amanda, do you see a picture, a PDF that says the learning cycle? Weird. I'm kind of speechless. Maybe what browser are you on? Oh, Jonathan says your bandwidth is low.
Yeah, she probably just has her bandwidth set low so she doesn't have video stuff set on it.
So, Amanda, if you go to the top, there's a little gear you can click on, change the settings to adjust. If your bandwidth can handle it, then you can adjust it to allow you to see everything. And now Marcia sees it. Okay. Okay, so here we are. So this circle right here represents ease and flow. This is when we're going along in life and everything's going great and we're just loving life. And then something happens. When something happens, we either catch it and create a shift and shift back up into ease and flow quickly and effortlessly, or we stay with the drift, go down into drama, and we come in here and we experience the grip of the victim, villain, hero, drama triangle, where our options are fight, flee, freeze, or faint. It's all about our survival brain. It's just options to survive. So I either yell at you or I give you the silent treatment. Either I say, screw you, and run and slam the door and leave, or I, just totally disconnect from you and ignore you, or whatever. So versions of survival versus thrival. If I'm in essence, then I actually just listen to you, don't take it personal, come from a space of love, and generate solutions to create what I really most want. So now, if you look at this up here, ease and flow, ease and flow, ease and flow, if I'm in wonder, and all of these are shift moves, and I'm going to give you more shift moves in a moment, but if I wonder, if I live in a space of know-it-all, I'm in a persona, and I will drift. Personas require that we drift. Essence allows us to shift and stay in ease and flow. So wonder will help us shift and stay in ease and flow. Recommitment will help us shift and stay in ease and flow. Breathing and moving our body will help us shift our state of mind and come back into ease and flow. So I said shift our state of mind. Einstein said no problem can be solved from the same state in which it was created. So one of my high-end clients pays me over $100,000 a year. I was on a one-on-one session with him this morning, and he was stuck on a drift on a certain thing, building his business. And we spent like an hour working through all these layers of various drifts that he had been experiencing and empowering him around that. So we were on the call for business reasons. We were on the call for growing his business. We were on the call to help him make more money. But we didn't even talk about more money for like 60 minutes. And then we spent like 5 minutes talking about more money, and it was resolved literally. The actual shift happened in probably about 30 seconds. Literally the first sentence I said about money, the issue shifted around the money. Is like, holy shit, why didn't I think of that myself? I'm like, Einstein said it best, no problem can be solved in the same state in which it was created. So if we're in a drift, and this is something that happens a lot in our conversations where we're looking for the solution. We're in an argument and we're sitting and arguing back and forth about the solution. Well, that's impossible to solve it from that place. You're in your reptilian brain trying to come up with a totally new and innovative solution which doesn't even exist in your reptilian brain. You must get up into your thrival brain where magic happens in order to generate solutions, which is in your frontal lobes, not in the base. So your survival brain lives in the very bottom of your skull where your spine meets and your neck meets your head. Your thrival brain exists in the frontal lobes in the front and left-hand side of up in your forehead, in the very top upper corner of the front side of your brain. And so when we choose to breathe, we shift out of survival. I'm not saying breathe like, we're always breathing. I'm saying consciously take over your breath instead of having it run on autopilot, and breathe deeply into your stomach And we could get a lot more technical. I could teach a 3-day workshop just on breath, but not here today. Just know, like, if all I did was breathe into my stomach, I can create a shift that way. If all I did was shift from knowing it all to being in a space of wonder, I could create a shift. If I shifted from figuring it out to wondering into it, I could create a shift. If I shifted from a bunch of things, shifting from persona to essence. So let's go over the drift list now. I could do this model all day long, but in the interest of time, let's shift to the drift list and the shift list. I'm going to start with the drift list. So I want you to look through this list and look at which ones of these do you do, or which ones of these have you done. So I'm going to zoom out just a little. So drift list, what takes you off course from ease and flow? So merging, you probably don't know what that means, and you don't need to. If you don't know what it means, just skip past it. So criticizing, if you do that, write it down. Blaming, if you do that, write it down. Cleaning, now, does that mean every time you clean it's a drift? No. What it means is those times when you're all pissed off and you just grab a broom and start cleaning the house out of pissed offness, that's a drift. Later on, you'll see one that says watching TV. Does that mean every time you watch TV it's a drift? No. If you're watching TV to escape a feeling or to escape life, yeah, it's a drift. And the way you can know if it's a drift is if at the end of it you feel more alive and happy and spacious, then it's not a drift. If at the end of it you feel more tired and droggy, it is a drift. So if you sit down and you start watching TV and 15 minutes later you feel worse than when you sat down, you're in a drift. So rehearsing, you're like, what is rehearsing? Like rehearsing for a play? No. Rehearsing is, well, I'm in a conversation, and instead of just speaking the authentic, transparent truth about what's happening for me, I'm sitting here thinking, should I say that? No, I shouldn't say that, because then maybe she'll respond this way. Maybe I should say this. No, I should say it this way. And so in my mind, I'm rehearsing over and over and over and over how to say it. Instead of just frickin' being my authentic self and being present in the moment, I'm trying to package and rehearse exactly how to say it. I'm in a drift. If I'm blaming, if I'm criticizing, if I'm waiting, people waiting. When you're waiting, you're gaining weight. Waiting is the same as W-E-I-G-H-T-I-N-G, waiting. When you're waiting, you're gaining weight. Because you're waiting for life to deliver. You're waiting for the economy to pick up. You're waiting for your husband to change. You're waiting to be happy. You're waiting for Jesus to save you. You're waiting to lose that weight. You're waiting to make money. You're waiting for your ship to come in. You're waiting to win the lottery instead of creating. You're in a drift. Consuming food, going to the store and buying shit to try to fulfill the void within you because there's feelings you don't want to feel and there's self-love issues you don't want to face, and so you think buying stuff is going to make you feel better. You think eating food over the top of your feelings is going to help you feel better, but then you just turn around and crucify yourself even more because you continue to put on weight and you continue to avoid doing the work that needs to be done to create what you really want. Judging. Anticipating. You know, we get so caught up, even getting overly excited about the future versus being present in the present can be a drift. Concealing, meaning hiding. How you doing? Fine. Versus, you know, I'm still kind of pissed off. I had a fight earlier with my wife, and I'm moving through it and breathing, and I'm choosing to be present here now. And I noticed that I've still got some tension in my neck. Versus, oh, I'm good, how are you? So concealing, or hey, you seem to be withdrawn lately. What's going on? Oh, nothing. That's concealing. You're lying, you're hiding, you're, doing all this drifting versus just being real and being you. Controlling. You try to control the situation instead of flowing with it. Do you have any control freak tendencies? Notice, too, that all of these drifts tie to personas. And anytime you're in an either-or type of thinking, either I can do this or I can do that. Either I can do what I love or I can have money. Either I can agree with my spouse or I can be right or I can be happy. Or either we can do what she wants or we can do what I want. Anytime you're in any version of either or, you're in a persona and you're in a drift. And some of you might be like, holy shit, I'm drifting most of the time. Yeah. If I were to go back to that other model, the learning cycle, where I was talking about ease and flow and then something happens, the average person is only in ease and flow for about 15 seconds before they get back into another drift. They're literally spending the far majority of their life in drift. Between controlling and blaming and judging and anticipating and rehearsing and waiting and merging and concealing and policing and yawning and analyzing and watching TV and getting confused and coughing and being sarcastic and getting sick and thinking I'm not enough and worrying about the future and the bills and the money and getting embarrassed and complaining and withdrawing and figuring it out. You know, what does that mean, figuring it out? There's a posture of figuring it out versus wandering into something. Figuring it out is lost in survival and trying to solve a problem from the same state in which it was created. It would be like me if I spent an hour on the phone trying to structure strategy for my client this morning. I could have given him every strategy in the world and it would have meant crap if we didn't shift his state of being. The shifting is where the power is. A coach can know everything in the world about business, about marketing, about sales. If that coach doesn't know how to assist you in shifting your drift, he's not worth it. There's not much he can really do for you. Because if you don't get out of your own way, you're screwed. There's no amount of strategy or information that's ever going to liberate you. So figuring it out versus wandering into it, opening to receive, breathing, and being inspired, those are much more empowering than figuring it out. Thinking I'm not enough is a victim statement. It's like caught up in old patterns of upper limits of thermostat setting and not knowing the magnificence of who you are. Lecturing, getting bored. You know, getting bored, you probably don't know this, but it's simply the underlying core emotion is anger. If your child is angry, they're bored. If your spouse is, or sorry, if your child is bored, they're angry. Don't ask them, well, don't sit and tell your child, well, go do something then. Instead, get curious. Hey, so how are you feeling? You know, talk so your child will listen, and listen so your child will talk. And even better, listen first. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. So if they're saying, I'm bored, you might want to get curious about what they're so angry about. And typically it probably relates to their preteen or even earlier. And they're angry because part of them knows they have limitless power and capacity, and they feel completely stifled and suppressed in a small body, in a small world where everything else outside of them seems to be controlling them, and they're getting immersed into life happens to me. And if they knew what was going on, they would know that they were angry about the circumstance of feeling stuck and powerless, and that they were wanting to be liberated, but they didn't know how, and they were believing that life was happening to them and that there was nothing they could do about it. And you as a parent are not empowering them to step up. You know, we had someone post in Limitless Legion here last week about they've always gone to church and they've always taken their kids to church, and she just had the thought, well, maybe I don't have to go to church every week, and maybe we could do something even cooler. And so her and her kids chose to watch a different training and have a different type of church, and they were edified and fulfilled and became alive and started having this joy and this passion and this purpose, this interaction, rather than going through the motions doing what they thought they, quote, should do. Now that doesn't mean that going to church couldn't be absolutely beneficial. If you're inspired to go to church and you go to church and it's edifying you, by all means keep doing it. And if you're going to church because that's what you should do and it's not edifying you, then you might want to get curious about how you're doing it as a drift versus from essence to create what you really want. Knowing and keeping in mind that the principle is that it's not what we do, it's how and why we do it that determines whether it's a drift or whether it's empowering. And the way you know whether it's a drift or not is, how do you feel afterwards? Do you feel more spacious, more joy, more freedom, more goodness, or is it dragging you down? So looking at the rest of this drift list, freezing, that would be like, I just like freeze. That's like deer in the headlight look. Like instead of staying authentic and in the flow, I clam up. Some issue hits me. So the difference between happy, successful people is people who are unconscious when they're running business, they're a CEO, they're running their own business, they're faced with challenges with their kids or their spouse or their partner or anything, they freeze up and they don't know how to shift through their problems or their struggles or their challenges or hurdles. Instead, they freeze and get into the drift, and then they get overwhelmed, and then they do everything in life to avoid being confronted by resistance. So then they slowly get backed further and further into a limiting body, a limiting life, a limiting job, a limiting relationship, until they are literally barely surviving. The vast majority of people are literally living lives of quiet desperation. There is someone committing suicide every 40 seconds in the world. Since we have been on this call, I did the math and I'm probably off, but if I did the math right, over 100 people have committed suicide since we've been on this call. Think about that. It's huge. If all we did was went and taught people how to shift and quit believing their stories and shift their paradigms and their mindsets and their state of being, and to be empowered and live lives of choice instead of reaction, to stop viewing themselves as victims and start viewing themselves as creators, conscious creators that have the ability to create a life of choice. If this is all we did, we would be doing the greatest work we could possibly do. So getting busy is a drift. Getting tired is a drift. Getting sick is a drift. Getting bored is a drift. Caretaking is a drift. It's the hero. And notice all of these drifts, each one of these comes from one of the three tribes. Caretaking is a hero tribe. Whining is the victim tribe. Smiling is probably a hero tribe. Like when someone's talking to you and you're not really interested in what they're saying, instead of being honest and authentic and saying, I've noticed I don't really want to talk shit about the Joneses today, and I'm getting distracted around our conversation. What I would love to know is, what are you most excited about, or what's you most challenged, or how can I best serve you today? Let's talk about something else. Instead of smiling and acting interested, get real. Anytime you're getting shy, so I ask you guys to post videos on Facebook and everyone acts like it's a big deal, and I get it. It used to be a big-ass deal for me too. But that's just a version of getting shy. Well, why the hell would we get shy? If we are infinite beings, if we are, the children of the great creator and source, why are we acting shy? Why are we acting small? Marianne Williamson said, we're not afraid of our smallness and our darkness, we're afraid of our greatness. And she said it in different words. I'm not trying to quote her directly, but I'm just trying to get the point across. Like, if we knew who we really were, and we could be okay with that thermostat setting of really vibrating in that high frequency of pure prosperity, pure joy, pure love, pure awesomeness, and knowing who we really were instead of belittling ourselves and tearing ourselves down and acting like we're not good enough and thinking that we're nothing and that we suck and feeling guilt and shame and crucifying ourselves and then getting shy to get on camera because we're afraid that everyone else is going to crucify us the same way we crucify ourselves. So then we're seeking approval. And so then, I have literally 5,000 friends on Facebook. I post a video, and it shows me how many people watch the video. Thousands and thousands of people watch my videos. It tells me the numbers. Thousands of people view my posts. You know how many people like them? Typically less than 100. You know how many people comment on them? Typically less than 20. Why? Well, there's many reasons why. Sometimes they're busy. Sometimes they're whatever, distracted. Whatever. But a lot of the time it's because they don't want to be associated. They like what I'm saying for the most part. Sometimes they disagree with me, but they're fine with that. But they don't want to associate their name with me because they will be crucified and judged and criticized because there's a bunch of other people from their community who judge me and judge themselves and judge others for shining, for standing out, for not following the crowd, for maybe believing some things that they don't believe, or whatever. Instead of like, oh, cool, I hold a container that's of love that's big enough that whether I agree with someone or not, I love them. And we can be different. Different countries, different nationalities, different colors, different belief systems, and totally love each other with no resistance, no judgment, no self-righteousness, no hypocrisy, no nothing. But we tend to, be addicted to approval. So rising above it, we tend to cover shit with frosting and, basically positive thinking. That positive thinking alone will liberate us, which is bullshit. Positive thinking is helpful, but if we don't dig the root out, it's just like picking the top of the weed and we know tomorrow it's going to grow back. Pulling the roots is critical. And reprogramming the thoughts that generated those results is critical as well. So spacing out, getting dizzy, getting distracted, acting ditzy, all those are drifts. Smiling, correcting. Well, no, actually what I said was, that's correcting. Like instead of like, oh, what I hear you saying is, anytime we're like, well, I didn't say that, I said this. well, you're not listening, right? Or you're in a drift. Okay, that means you're in a drift. Well, you're in a persona. Okay, that means you're in a persona. Every time we point a finger out there, there's 3 fingers pointing back at us. So procrastinating is a drift. Assuming is a drift. Being misunderstood, like nobody understands me. They just don't understand. What I meant was this. Instead of, getting in that persona, get into, oh, I wonder how I can communicate in a way that they would understand. So we go from blaming to getting curious and taking responsibility. So justifying, defending, shopping, being disorganized, getting self-righteous, trying hard, looking interested, interrupting, getting silly, explaining, no, what I meant was, versus like, oh, really, that's how you took that. Tell me more. How did you experience that? What was that like for you? What are you most wanting? I had a client who was in one of my group programs last week, and we kind of had a falling out. Basically, I saw that he wasn't fully engaged in participating, and I realized, holy crap, he's not truly committed. He'd only been in the program for a month or two, and I realized he's not fully committed. And I said, you know what? I've got to get him either committed in or out, otherwise bad shit's going to happen here. So I called him out. I'm like, dude, you're not committed. You got 2 choices. Well, you got infinite choices, but bottom line is you're going to get committed or you're going to get out. What is it? You've got till Friday to let me know. And by Friday, he's like, I appreciate you calling me out. You're absolutely right. I wasn't committed. I love what you're doing. It's totally valuable. And everything else I've got going and this, that, and the other, I've actually never truly been committed to this. And I get to choose out for now. And I'll possibly come back later, but totally I get to choose out. I'm like, thank goodness. Let's free up that space and get the right person in who will fully activate and participate and engage so that we can move forward with power and, we have everyone in the group moving together as a unit, getting the most out of the experience. So I was less interested in his approval and less interested in thinking that that was a failure and more interested in having it be a total success. We had a win-win conversation and everyone's happy and we've moved forward, and now I opened up a free space for someone to move in and be absolutely committed. And the group to be more powerful because of it, and for him to be more aligned within himself and be even better off creating what he wants, because instead of feeling out of integrity because he could be actually aligned. Because I don't have the only path, there's infinite paths. There's a quote that says, there are infinite paths up the mountain, and the only person wasting their time is the one running around telling everyone else they're on the wrong path. So anyway, I bring that up because when I got on the phone with him to clear it up, my ego wanted to explain. No, this is what happened. You're seeing it wrong. No, it's this way. No, it wasn't that way. No, you're blah, blah, blah. That would be all explaining, and that's bullshit. It's a drift. I caught it, noticed the sensations. I was like, oh, that's a drift. I don't do that. So I shifted. And I was like, okay, I'm going to get on the call and I'm going to listen to him. So I spent about 45 minutes listening to him. When he was all expressed, we spent about 5-10 minutes addressing the logistics, and we left happy. And I didn't need to explain anything. So comparing, massive drift. If you're sitting thinking, you know, oh, I could never be as good as Christopher, I could never be good as Tony Robbins, or how come she's so amazing, or how come everyone else seems to have their life together and I'm just such a mess. You know, and women, one of your big things is you always think you're crazy and that everyone else has their shit together. And there's this thing about like comparing your reality with someone else's highlight reel. Like any version of comparing is a drift. So if you're doing it, catch yourself comparing, be aware. And the value, guys, of knowing these drifts is at any moment. You know, right now I have a timer on my phone that goes off every hour to just have me check in. Say, what are you experiencing? What are you creating? What are you wanting? What's happening? And if all you did was check in regularly and say, am I right now in ease and flow, or am I in any form of a contraction, a contracted state, any form of a drift? If your body has any tension in it, there's some form of a drift happening. If you're stressing, worrying, complaining, overwhelmed, you're drifting. And the bad news is whatever state you're accustomed to being in, you become addicted to, and that becomes your thermostat setting of how good you can handle life. And so the number one trick to creating what you really most want in life is learning how to identify the drifts and create the shifts in the quickest and easiest way possible. Because the more time you spend in the drift, the more you're going to have that in the future. And the more time you spend in ease and flow, the more you're going to have that in the future, because what you vibrate, you receive, you attract. So rushing is a drift, organizing is a drift, intellectualizing is a drift, injuring yourself is a drift. Daydreaming is a drift, getting wordy is a drift, getting distracted is a drift, and body aches are a drift. So that, you know, think of all those, write down your favorite ones that you tend to do the most. Get curious about those. Don't hate yourself for doing those, but just get curious and love yourself and bring space around those so that you can begin to recognize anytime you're doing any of them, so that you can shift that and go back to ease and flow and be in a space of power. And over the time, learn to master that. And ideally, get coaching and support. You know, if you are in a place to get one-on-one coaching, get one-on-one coaching. If you're not in a place to afford that, get group coaching. If you're not in a place to afford that, keep watching these training videos and interacting and being as raw and vulnerable and real as you can on the group so that you can create the shift and up-level and create more and more joy, more and more connection, more and more confidence, more and more self-love, more and more money, more and more prosperity, so that you can create a better and better life, infinitely expanding into the greatest version of yourself and stepping further and further into the true limitless nature of who you are. Now, this is the shift list, which means this is ways to shift out of the drift and empower yourself from the drama to a life of choice, to joy, to ease, to flow, to grace, to freedom, to peace of mind. This is how you shift your state of being so that you can solve any problem that ever approaches you. Again, I could teach a 3-day workshop, if not more. We could probably talk for an entire year just on the stuff we're covering today. Even that's not true. I've been practicing mastery of all of this for this models that we've been talking about today for nearly the last 10 years. And although I consider myself one of the best with this, I still have not completely mastered it. So it's a journey. It's like a martial art. You don't walk into a martial arts studio and take a magic pill and all of a sudden you're a black belt in martial arts. You take lesson after lesson, you practice, perfect practice makes perfect, and as a rule of thumb, after you've got 10,000 hours of experience doing it right, then now you're a master at doing it right consistently without even thinking about it. So yes breath is one tool. That's basically the short, easy version is breathe deep into your stomach, ideally through your nose and at 6-second intervals. So breathe in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Breathe out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Breathe in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with no pause at the top or the bottom, just a continuous connected breath. So that's the short version. Now recommitting is the next critical thing. I committed to Ironman 9 months ago. Right now I'm hitting resistance more than I've ever hit it. I've got daughters, I've got business, everything's booming. I've got soreness, I've got all this stuff going on. More than ever, I'm tempted to not do Ironman. But I either quit and prove to myself that I quit when I start things and all kinds of other stuff, or I keep recommitting. And so anytime I'm off course, I go, oh shit, I missed that workout. And then I can either go, well, too late, I already missed a workout, and then miss the next one, or I go, okay, missed the workout, back on course, recommit. Creative joint play. All this is physiologically, oftentimes we can't think our way out of the problem because our brain is activated in the survival part of the brain, and we got to get out of that part of the brain. And so in order to get out of that part of the brain, breath and moving our body in creative ways, because it's the opposite. When we're in a drift, our body is tense and contracted. And if we do the opposite and get spacious and flowing in our movement and our breath, then it will shift our physiological state, which will require us to shift up into our frontal lobes instead of our survival. So it's simply a way of manipulating our body and our breath and our posture that will also change our mindset. So giving and receiving appreciation, if you shift from blame to appreciation, instead of, you suck, you did this, say sorry, then you're in a drift. But if I said, for instance, my wife may say, you work too much. And I could say, what? How could you accuse me of working too much? Don't you appreciate what I do? Don't you know I do this for you? Blah, 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 blah. And now we're in a full-on drama argument. But it says, honey, you're always working so much. And I say, and I take it, I'm like, what I heard you say is, I work so much. And I notice that I feel sad as you say that, and I'm imagining that what you're wanting is more connection and quality time. And I'm really appreciating you always wanting to spend quality time with me. What that tells me is that you love me. I want you to know that I love you too, and I love quality time with you as well. Thank you for always wanting to spend quality time with me, and thank you for the feedback about where I may be out of balance. I really appreciate you being those things for me. So just shifting my mindset from victim and believing she's attacking me and then turning into the villain, shifting to listening and hearing and acknowledging and appreciating what's happening behind the scenes, shifts me from victim to power. So then the next one, ask a wonder question. So instead of like, no, this is what happened, it's like, I wonder how I created this. I wonder what I can learn from this. I wonder what I'm trying to teach myself through this. I wonder what's next and how I can create what I really most want. So anytime we get curious and ask a wonder question, instead of arguing and defending where we're currently at, it transforms tremendously. Now, loving your experience. So if you love what's happening and love the experience and observe what's happening, you can either make up stories about what's happening and judgments about what's happening, or you can be present and love the experience and know that it's of service and that you've called it in to teach and empower you. So a couple of examples of this. One person, a member of Limitless Legion last week, had people from his community of origin judging him for participating with me and with this group and this kind of stuff and his expansion and growth. The truth is they're just scared of him shining fully. They felt scared when they tried that on because they saw the joy in the expansion. They upper limited because they're not accustomed to having that much freedom of speech and joy and expression for themselves. And so instead of owning that they got scared when they felt that much joy and positive energy and that they upper limited because they don't understand that's happening, instead they immediately went to judgment and criticism and condemnation. And so then he takes it personal, thinks that, oh no, maybe this, maybe that, when the truth is if he would just love his experience, like, oh, interesting, this is so awesome, they're triggering unloved places within myself, what a perfect experience to teach me how to love myself, boom, and move forward. Another example of this, one of my clients, a newer client, hopped on a call the other day, and someone was having a tough experience on the call. And this new client was like, I can't be in that lower frequency and vibration, which may or may not be true. What may actually be more true is that client would have more power if that client had the ability to be able to be in her power in any circumstance. And if she loved the experience, she would say, interesting, this is triggering some deep stuff in me and I'm losing my power, my composure. I'm going into a drift about this, making up stories and judgments and believing those. I love this experience because it's showing me my next learning curve, my next learning edge, and I'm making up stories and judgments about the facilitator and the process and this woman and the vibration and the frequency and the energy, and I'm out of here. Versus, oh, wow, this is exposing to me. How can I be in my power? Because true power is when I can be in my power no matter what situation I'm in, anywhere, anytime, anyhow, and totally learn. And now that don't mean I have to stay in a situation. Sometimes it's true that it's not in alignment and I choose out. But the way you know is if it's like triggers and there's energy and judgment and triggers happening inside of you, then you know you're just drifting and making up stories about it. So speaking authentically, describe a body sensation, a feeling, and an unarguable thought. So many times people think speaking authentically means just saying whatever comes to my mind, which isn't true. Truly authentically isn't me saying, you suck. It's me saying, oh, interesting, I noticed I had tension in my neck. I felt angry, and I had the thought that you sucked, but I know that I'm responsible for what I'm feeling and what we're creating, so now I'm getting curious. I wonder what it is I can learn from this. Would you tell me more about what you're experiencing, what you're saying, because I want to understand. So that's a way to speak authentically, not to just say whatever the hell comes to our mind. Tossing is another thing I don't want to teach you right now. Persona play is another thing I don't want to teach you right now. And then conscious listening is basically what I heard you say is this, what I imagine you are feeling is this, and what I imagine you most want is this. Now this is a very elementary version of conscious listening. I'm just giving you the watered down, quick, tip of the iceberg version. But say someone comes to you and says, you really suck. What I heard you say is that I suck. I imagine you're feeling angry, and that what you're most wanting is blah, blah, blah in relation to me. So to just listen instead of taking shit personal and, you know, thinking that attacking and defending and justifying and explaining and all the other things is ever going to help. Okay, so let's tie this all together and then let's wrap this thing up. So in relation to children, and I'm sorry. The second I tell you I'm sorry, what I said is, you're a victim, I'm a villain. Think about that. I'm sorry. That's not us being equals. That's not us being powerful creators. That's me seeing you as a victim and me as the villain. And now I'm showing up as the hero to repent for my villainous ways, to help you feel, to make you feel better, because you're unable and unwilling to create yourself feeling better. And that presupposes that even it would be feeling better, because even that's a judgment, because sadness isn't bad. Anger isn't bad. Fear isn't bad. When we judge anger, sadness, and fear as these negative experiences, then we have a negative experience. when we just observe them as feelings that we're currently feeling and then utilize them to fuel our positive creations, they're absolutely positive. When I take responsibility for your feelings and judge your feelings as the wrong experience, then I've automatically jumped on the hero square. So if you guys get on and you're like, Christopher, you're so amazing, thank you so much. And I'm like, yeah, praise me, woo! Then, and if I'm like dependent upon that, then we're in a codependent relationship. And then the second you turn around and you want to crucify me because you put me on a pedestal first, and now you want to find out what's wrong with me so you can crucify me, and then you crucify me and I'm like, I can't believe she did that. Here I was just providing value and serving her selflessly, and then she turned around and attacked me and tried to crucify me. That bitch. Can you believe she did that? Victim, 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 victim. Or if you attack me and you're like, you shouldn't have said that. You shouldn't have done that. I can't believe you. I thought you were a good man. Now I know the truth about who you are. No one's done that lately, but it's something that people do, right? So if they said that and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. How did I wrong you? Here, let me make this right. Hero. Or villain. Fuck you. You don't know me. What the fuck are you talking about? I'm just fucking here serving and you're judging me. You don't know me. Villain. Essence would say, I hear that you hate me and that you think I suck and that you believe that you've now identified my true colors and you thought I was awesome and now you know that I suck. And I imagine you're very upset. And that what you most want is to be able to find people that you can depend on, that are high integrity, that you can trust. And then they might be like, yeah, and then maybe we turn it around. Or they might be like, F you, don't try to use your psychology talk on me. Like, I hear you, I love you, namaste, best wishes, good luck. You know, whatever. The point is, where the energy is, the issue is. If I'm triggered, there's an issue. Now, if I go into, the difference between not saying sorry but not taking responsibility is part of the conversation here. If I just say, well, I'm not going to apologize, there's an issue. If I'm like, I'm not going to take responsibility, there's an issue. But if I'm like, I will acknowledge what happened without making you into a victim. So say I stepped on your toe. I could say, oh, sorry. Well, the chances are that I'm just sweeping it under the rug and that I will step on your toe again, because if I don't actually take the time to acknowledge how and why I stepped on your toe and realign myself, then I'm just going to do it again. So then it's like, sorry, it's okay. Sorry, it's okay. Sorry, it's okay. Sorry, it's okay. Ah, when's this ever going to change? But if I'm like, interesting, I just stepped on your toe. I wonder how I created that. Yeah, I was still drifting from earlier. I was kind of upset over the conversation we had had. I hadn't cleared that up. I was probably subconsciously trying to get even with you. And I've been, lost in my mind in this drift over the blah, blah, blah. And instead of being present right here, right now, I was distracted, therefore creating me not, when I'm not fully present, then I stub toes, I step on toes, I break shit, I get in accidents, I injure myself, I do all these other things, right? So if instead of saying sorry, so if we said sorry, I didn't mean to step on your toe, I still didn't actually discover how and why I stepped on it. I didn't actually adjust. I haven't actually taken responsibility. I've just actually acted like a victim. Yeah, it just happened. I accidentally stepped on your toe. No, I created stepping on your toe somehow. So I'm actually playing victim and viewing you as the victim at the same time when I say, sorry, I didn't mean to. Now, if I said, oh, man, now I could say sorry, and sometimes I do say sorry just for the sake of speaking the language that everyone speaks, because they're like, that's the language they speak, right? But in essence, when I'm saying sorry, I'm not just saying it the way I used to say it. I'm thinking of it consciously, like, how did I create this? What can I learn from it? How can I get back in integrity with this person? So one of the things I discovered as I explored this was that there is a thank you underneath every sorry. So I could say either, and try on the energy of this. I could say, oh, I'm sorry I stepped on your toe. Or I could say, wow, I went unconscious for a minute and created that, and I didn't want to hurt you. Thank you for your patience with my lack of consciousness and awareness in that moment. Notice the difference between me saying thank you for this in you while I created this versus I'm sorry. Would you rather me say I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, or thank you for understanding? I recommit to being present when I'm in your space and honoring your body. Which one of those feels better to you? Try that on. How does that feel in your body? So if we replace the word sorry, every time I tested this for a while and I thought about writing a book, and one day I might, or maybe one of you is an amazing book writer and you'll be like, I'll write it for you, and I'll be like, awesome, as long as it takes a little bit of my time because I don't want to be more busy. But underneath every sorry is a thank you. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your understanding. So rather than I'm sorry I'm late, what does that mean? Oh, I'm just going to do it again. Sorry I'm late, the traffic was bad. Victim, going to do it again. Instead, thank you for my patience with me not being here when I said I would be. I didn't judge traffic properly and allot enough time. I recommit to keeping my agreements with you. No self-beat-up, no guilt, no shame, no excuses, no justification, no sorry. But I did take responsibility. I did acknowledge how I created it. I recommitted to being in integrity and honoring the person. Now our kids, if I teach them to say sorry when they don't actually mean it, I'm teaching them to not honor their truth. If I'm teaching them to say sorry while they're still upset, I'm teaching them to suppress their voice, suppress their truth, override their truth, and live an entire life of overriding their truth in the sake of taking responsibility for other people's feelings, which requires that we believe feelings are bad versus feelings being of service. We literally condition our children to be codependent when we teach them this way. If instead of me saying to my 3-year-old, oh, say you're sorry to Tommy. You slapped him, say you're sorry. Instead of that, I'm like, honey, what's going on? What are you feeling? What's happening? What are you experiencing? What are you wanting? Did you want to hurt Tommy? No. Oh, well, what is it you want? I want the steering wheel of the pirate ship. Oh. But do you want to hurt people? No. Okay, would you be interested in making it a solution so everyone could have what they want? Yes. Okay, what would be a good solution? We could take turns. Oh, that's a great idea. How about you tell Tommy we could take turns and that you'll be nice now? Okay, we could take turns and I'll be nice. And maybe ask Tommy if he's willing to take turns and be nice. Will you take turns and be nice? So now I taught her to ask for what she wants, take responsibility for creating what she wants instead of me saving her, so she didn't need a hero. Me helping her by asking her questions instead of demanding and controlling military style. Me guiding her to solve her own problems so she doesn't need a hero. You wonder why all these women need a man to save them. Hello? Princesses in training. Wonder why everyone wants an apology. I need an apology before I can feel good and forgive you. Okay, so you're going to keep drinking the poison and feeling like shit until someone says sorry because you're attached to this bullshit story? Why not just shift right now and feel amazing regardless of what that person does? Yeah, and this applies to both sexes for sure. And if the other person doesn't shift and they refuse to shift, maybe they don't deserve to be in your space anymore. Maybe you don't have relationships, you have entanglements. So if you're going to train your little boy and little girl to sell out on themselves and to lie, because you're also teaching them to lie. If they don't actually feel sorry and you're making them say sorry, you're saying lie. Lie if you're put under pressure, lie. That's what you're teaching them. And the biggest issue with kids, anytime you have an issue with the kid, the issue isn't with the kid, it's with you. Clear up the issue in you and the issue will clear up in the kid. And then you're teaching your child, if someone attacks you and blames you and says you made them feel some way, then you need to take responsibility for them their feelings, put your whole life on hold, and go save them. So you're teaching them to be a constant, have like a hero complex, and be in a constant drift for their whole life. And to build their self-worth based on what everyone else says and thinks of them. So one of the other key things with children is we tend to be like, it's okay, stop crying, stop crying. Well, the number one solution is to help them feel more, not less. To help them feel more, not feel better. So when my child's crying, I don't say, oh, don't cry, it's okay, it's okay. That's hero. I'm playing into her victim game. What I say is, oh, what's happening? Do you feel sad? Yes. Most people are emotionally illiterate. My daughter knows more, my 3-year-old knows more about her feelings than 95% of the people on this call. She knows when she's feeling sad, she knows when she's feeling happy, she knows when she's feeling angry, she knows when she's feeling scared, and she knows how to properly articulate those things with absolute accuracy, and she shifts like magic. Jesus said, become like unto the little child. That means a lot of things, but one of the things it means is the child goes, oh, and they cry, and they go, I'm so sad, I'm so mad. And you're like, and if you just be with them, like, oh, you're sad and mad? Yeah, he hurt me. Ah! The other day, my daughter was doing a total freak out session, and she wouldn't shift. And I was asking her the questions and encouraging her to feel more, and she still wouldn't shift. It was a big, intense drift. And so I was like, okay, freak out more. I said, instead of just kind of whining, how about yell and like kick your arms and your feet? And she's still like totally pissed off. And so she started doing it. And she's like, ah! And I'm like, yell louder. Use your hands. And she like freaks out, and seriously, and I'd already tried like all these other listening techniques and this skill and that practice and all this. Nothing was working. I even freaked out with her for a minute. I like started doing this, ah! And even that didn't work. She's like, stop! Eh! And I'm like, okay, how about you freak out harder? Go louder, go harder, kick, use your arms, punch, make noises. Literally 10 seconds later, she stopped, she curled up in my lap, and I held her, and 10 seconds later, she was off running off and playing like a kid again. I didn't say, why are you freaking out? Stop freaking out or you're going to your room. Say you're sorry. You're being disrespectful. What's wrong with you? Like, this is the shit that becomes the voice in their head that drives them to insanity and half the shit you guys deal with. Your voice becomes the voice in their head. Your parents' voice became the voices in your head. Your community's voice became the voices in your head that you use to crucify yourself and undermine your self-love, which destroys every idea of success and happiness you ever wanted. So the key is, don't teach your kids to lie. Don't teach them to say sorry when they're not. Teach them to take responsibility. How are you creating this? What do you really want? How can you create a solution? What are you feeling? Express that. Now choose what you want, and what action can you take to create that? Go create it. Let me think if there's anything else that wants to come through before we wrap this up. Any questions? Type them in if you have questions. So the energy of sorry versus thank you. Thank you shifts us back to essence, where we relate spirit to spirit, soul to soul, heart to heart, instead of ego to ego. Sorry is ego to ego. It's someone's a victim, someone's a villain, and someone's a hero. It doesn't matter how good you think your intentions are. If you're not doing it from your true essence and your true heart with a true win-win, if you're heroing, trying to save someone, and it's not from that place, it's not healthy. And the bad news about all three positions is, whatever position you're on in that drama triangle, you're attracting the other two positions. So if you're in villain, you're attracting victims and heroes. If you're in hero, you're attracting victims and villains. So if you ever look around and you seem like everyone's either being mean to you or saving you, which is like where my daughter was on the playground the other day. She starts freaking out because she can't get the swing. Not that she couldn't get the swing, but she wasn't getting the swing. She had heroes saying, it's okay, I'll help you, help you, help you. And she had the villains, were the people who wouldn't let her on the swing, and she was perceiving herself as the victim. I helped her to step back into power, feel her feelings, create a win-win agreement, and then get what she wanted, and then share with others, and then move on. That's essence. Anything else is drama and chaos. Victim, villain, hero. Victim, villain, hero. The way off of that is to shift. If you're in a drift, you're in the drama. You're in victim, villain, or hero. If you're experiencing contraction, you're in the drift. You're in the drama. You're in victim, villain, hero. If you have tension in your body or stress of any sort, if it's not spacious and ease and flow, you're in the drift. Choose to shift. Choose ease and flow. Choose any of the shift moves I shared with you today. Any of them work. You don't have to do all of them. One. Any one. You just pick one. And do it. And you shift back into ease and flow, and from that place you can solve any problem, anywhere, anytime. And if you'll empower your children to take responsibility with love and accountability and solutions with authentic expression and feeling their feelings versus teaching them to judge their experience, judge themselves, lie, and all the other things we've talked about, it will transform their world and your world. And we can transform this world. My daughter will be way more of the solution than the problem because of the way I choose to be with her. She won't be spending, so for me, I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars sorting through my pain. For her, she'll still have her stories. That's part of being human. But it'll be a completely different experience. Much more easeful experience. Things will come so naturally for her. Because she gets to live in that. So the first step, last thing, not all of you have children. This absolutely applies to you, because inside of you, you have an inner child. And as long as you're using guilt and shame and manipulation and control tactics to control yourself, you are doing the same thing to your child as you do to yourself. It's the only reason why you parents are doing it to your children, because that's how you treat you. The root of this, and even if you don't have children, it still applies. If you want to love yourself, if you want to be successful, fully love yourself. If you want to fully love yourself, treat yourself the way you would treat, the way you hear me treating my 3-year-old. Or even better. Find the way to fully love yourself and be in integrity and take accountability and responsibility without guilt, without shame, without blame, without attack, without criticism, without control, through a choice to shift, to breathe, to move, to love, to take responsibility. Responsibility meaning the ability to respond, not who's to blame for this. Saying, okay, I created this, therefore I can create something else. That's it for today, guys. Create an amazing rest of the week.